Hello there and welcome to the most watched business show in the country. This is the Business Weekly Show here on City TV and I am your host, Michael Obodu. Please hit me up on Twitter at @mobodu. In the next 1 hour, we'll be bringing you a wrap of all the major business news stories for the week. So if you're ready, let's go. If you thought you'd seen it all with regards to the increase in prices of goods and services, then you'd have to prepare for more because Kenkey sellers too are set to join in soon. This is quite worrying considering the fact that it's a staple meal for lots of people, especially those with low incomes. But what could be the justification for the move by these Kenkey sellers?
I have come to Jamestown in Accra. On this stretch, I could count more than 10 Kenkey houses. I understand these are hubs where individuals come to buy in bulk. This could be the right place to ask some of the traders why there has been a constant increase in the price of Kenkey.
Why 450? Be an extra me 450. One more mina come. You know I connected 750,000. You know 750. One sister bring a cock when a man saying, Equal batuni, Banen were on, I on a bian about 10 city.
Last year, to Monica, no man,
no man, why 15, where and 35.
Last year, to maybe. She this year, no,
this year, no, they think we're getting a kind. This year, potential, no, I last 2 weeks, near 75, near 55.
Me 2 weeks ago, he na 750. Need this week 80.
Here in 85, can 75.
Na hey, I believe it to mo. Ochifonchi agma abelieno. Ochifonchi. Beno senish kana sana ke jatwa ba ke pakwa ba lodu pa. Aye pakwa ba lodu ahun beno ba na ka twa ba ke ba ke shin These
traders have vowed to increase the prices higher if the situation does not change.
Shina na abele ya 6 million. Wo come na no 3 cedi ke 2 cedi epo. Wo ba kpabo. Na ne 1 4 ke 5.
Consumers are also bearing the brunt of the increase in prices.
Anyway, yole. I wait 1 cedi. Neighbor 5,000. Abone
50 pesos.
50 pesos. Abone me I get 3 cedi. In my akwe. Me no chuami. Ne ya tuni my come 3 cedi. E ya come here. But my dear. Shafe. Come on. Banku. I come 2 cedi.
First you come me all 50 pesos.
Okay, first maybe.
Less than 1 year, you come 50 pesos. About 70 pesos. Neighbor 1 cedi. Be an 3 cedi. Mean for enough of 10 years. Before the 13th, before the 25th of January 2013. Enough of 10 years. And you come 3. Can I want 2 cedi? 3 cedi for the chair. A papa cook. The guy come 3. Can you quiet? Bekena 20 Ghana kwa committee. Se on bill ega ba e ni twani e. Be san ma jete. 1p olopi.
The increment in the prices of goods is not peculiar to Accra. The Ashanti regional capital, Kumasi, is also dealing with similar challenges. Livestock dealers have also begun lamenting the impact of the phenomena on their businesses. Butchers in particular say they have been forced to raise their prices, but unfortunately, this has led to a significant decrease in the patronage of their products.
Persons who deal in livestock products have in recent times complained about poor patronage due to the high cost of cattle, primarily brought into the country from Burkina Faso. They say this is so because of the depreciation of the Ghana cedi as against the CFA franc, as many of the animals are not reared in Ghana. The livestock dealers, however, say the situation appears to have worsened due to the current economic situation in the country.
I feel 5 to 6 years I and you is in my 100 million. Can in try 20 million, say 100 million. And you be biao. Dollar ni ukosro, self a ukosro sa. And tia say economic masters no mu enfa. Mun kachi dollar ni self anu ngu me hunto. Masa. President we e papa o. Ye hu chire too much. Say anantwinam £1 20 Ghana cedi. Upon chini £1 25 Ghana cedi.
So ko to ade no a omu si safe no osoro. Enti omu bo calculator ansa no ma to ade na ama. Gariki. Baby I ton nantwi no wa mayen ka ya. Uto a obekunu a enso safe no osoro. Enti uto a omu di ton ma safe.
Wamu ko sisa no ko to nantwie ba na kosoro na anti ama nam no asan ba ma nam no bo aresi akosoro ka sika no nyina eka ho say transportation well manu a wamu free baby ba no se ni ka sika no abeka ho enam bo soso akosoro kakra enti o twitwa dia wonya enso they don't buy.
The advance called on government and relevant authorities to intervene to relieve them of their burden.
Every day there is a lack of managerial ability. Sasianu Burkina yakuntakwa. Wow. Burkina yakuntakwa. Ana umuno ya umudina nchweni ba. Ana Ghana suya na nchweni endoso. What I say? Dia ya umudi free stream banu susu. Endoso sa. So, inti managing kakra sa. But say anke dia ya omudi banu omuba na no bo akosoro ya bisa omusi self na akosoro so what you say ntie ya epanyi fo mu hwe bibia ne omuntimi yemma omu kachi dollar no any self no a bibia beba form this is omu chosa bibia e basa eye
omra no wo support ye ni ska iska ne wo ye nyem omu me loans omu bo ani loans a yenso ye betima apagya ye ho kakra ba say you could free Oko free adian so said the hospital say no beton amount. But who could sika wono the open obito.
With all the increments that have been going on, businesses have not been left out because they should expect to pay more for failing to file their annual returns on time. This is because the Registrar General's Department is set to increase the penalty to 500 Ghana cedis from the previous amount of 450 Ghana cedis.
According to the Registrar General's Department, the 11% increment in the penalty for the late filing of annual returns would apply to all company entities, namely public or private companies limited by shares, public or private companies limited by guarantee, and private and limited companies. These companies are to file their financial statement together with their annual returns at a cost of 50 Ghana cedis per year. External companies are also to submit their accounts to the department at a cost of $600 per year, or in default, pay a penalty of $750 in addition to fees for all defaulted years. The Registrar General is also asking partnerships and sole proprietorships to renew their businesses at a cost of 50 Ghana cedis and 25 Ghana cedis per year respectively. Furthermore, in compliance with provisions of the Companies Act 2019, Act 992, the Company Secretary is to submit a special resolution for a change of their company name by the addition of the appropriate suffix to the end of their company's name. Public Relations Officer for the department, Nicholas Ofori, tells City Business News the motive behind these new directives.
When it comes to compliance, I believe compliance is a little on the downturn, a little. But you see, what we are trying to do is to force or to segregate serious businesses from unserious businesses. The annual return is a necessity. It's an obligation for every company to do that. You see, once you are incorporated, it is your responsibility, and as a compliance to the Companies Act, file your annual returns at end of each financial year. If you are not doing that, it means that you are not serious, and by the powers conferred on the registrar by the Act or by the law, she can take your name out of the company register for defaulting to pay your annual returns. So what we are trying to say that she has used every measure to persuade you, to inform you, and you are not complying. Then she has the right to say, okay, for not complying, then I can take you. But you see, the increment is a measure to wean out the serious businesses, as I said, from unserious businesses.
Mr. Ofori further warned the department's clients to desist from using agents and intermediaries when transacting business with it.
The public is being advised that if they receive any call indicating that they should send money through Momo, please, that is not coming from the department. We don't operate any Momo, neither do we have any Momo.
Unfortunately, these increases might not go away anytime soon. Economist Dr. Patrick Esumi is projecting higher inflation rates in the country until the third quarter of the year. This, he says, is due to current market developments because national inflation hit 19.4% in March 2022, the highest since 2009.
The new inflation figure of 19.4% is the highest recorded since 2009. According to the government statistician Professor Samuel Kobnainim, the jump in inflation rate to 19.4% in the third month of 2022 was mainly influenced by the increase in the prices associated with food, transport and housing. Food inflation deepened its dominance over non-food inflation, recording 22.4% as against the 17.4% recorded in the previous month, and relative to the rate of non-food inflation of 17.0%. However, on a month-on-month basis, the difference between food and non-food inflation was relatively smaller, as food inflation stood at 5% relative to 3.7% that was recorded for non-food inflation. For the first time in a while, the Bono Ahafo region recorded the highest rate of inflation of 23.3% in the country. The Upper East region recorded the lowest rate of inflation of 12.5%. The new rise in the inflation rate comes at no surprise to many economists and stakeholders as prices of fuel and food continue to rise following tensions between Ukraine and Russia. Economist Dr. Patrick Esumi is one of these economists, and he is worried about its impact on the economy. He spoke to City Business News.
It is worrying because the rate of increase is beginning to pick up quite substantially. If you check, even though it's been going up, the percentage point increases have been going up, and that's a problem. And you also see that the inflation is now highly entrenched and heavily broad-based. So even though food inflation is the major driver, but you see that non-food is picking up, and then when you look at both imported and local, inflation is going up on all of them. So I think it's very worrying. I think the Bank of Ghana will probably have to be careful before they keep jacking up the rate. I think they have to. I think they will wait and observe how the last round of increases, how it plays out. It's not even been a month since the last increases, so I don't think they will be in a hurry at all to raise this rate. In any case, they had anticipated. So I don't think rate hikes should be the next action. But I think, when you look at the numbers we are seeing, it clearly suggests that the inflation high inflation is going to remain with us for a while. You notice that the big ticket items, i.e. the items that carry the most weight in our CPR basket, all of them have seen substantial increases.
Well, it isn't every commodity that is recording increases. Fuel stations are beginning to post slight reductions. This might not be anywhere near where we started off at the start of the year, but at least it's a sign of hope as the government's earlier announcement of a 1% reduction in the price of fuel, coupled with some stabilization of the cedi against the dollar, appears to be yielding some results.
After government, through the Minister of Finance, announced that prices of petroleum products were expected to see a change with effects from April 1, City News' checks at some fuel pumps indeed showed a reduction in prices. Some consumers who I spotted were not excited about the efforts made by government. What really could be their reasons?
Looking at the rate it went up, it's 15% is still small. So we need it to go down more.
How down? How further down? By how much?
If he can even do it maybe 30 pesos addition, it will be better.
They need to reduce it down. Because our work, maybe I'll go and take 4,000 goods and I'll come and come out 2,500 and buy diesel. And police for they also call it. And my woman and the children, how much am I going to use and feed them? So we are begging present.
Actually, I bought 10 liters. I usually buy in liters because that's what the company gives to me. I took about 10 liters. I didn't really check the price, but looking at it is about 9 cedis. Is it 40 something pesos? I'm not really keen about knowing how much it costs because it will just blow my mind.
Okay, but at least it has seen a reduction from what you used to buy previously.
Exactly, but the reduction is very minute. If we are getting, reduction the same way we are getting increments, then I think that will make a lot of sense. But we are getting reductions at very little fractions and then increment at high fractions. It doesn't really make sense here. But
Head of Research at COPEC, Benjamin Nsia, explains what accounts for the reduction, while adding that consumers could experience further drops in prices at the pumps if government takes off some other taxes.
There are four things that accounted for this particular reduction. One is that the international market price of the various products have declined, averagely by about 2%. And also the government has introduced or has reviewed downwards the margins by 15 pesos. So if you put the decrease of the price of the products on the international market, in addition to the 15 pesos reduction by government on the margins, then that is the expectant results we are getting. Be less optimistic, right? Because if you look at the data we are looking at, we don't see any further price decline in the second window of April. However, things may change in the coming days. If things change, prices could decline further. Government should consider also reducing the taxes on the builder, because as we speak, government did not touch any of its taxes on the builder, but rather reduce the margins of the transporters, and that also affects the cutting of the products within the petroleum downstream.
We can at least see that things aren't entirely gloomy. Our economy is beginning to pick up despite the many setbacks it has experienced from the pandemic, among others. Our gross domestic product GDP, which represents the value of all goods and services provided over a period of time within the country's borders, has recorded some growth. Provisional figures released by the Ghana Statistical Service show that Ghana's economy grew by 5.4% in 2021. This figure exceeds the 2021 gross domestic product GDP growth rate of 5.1% captured in the previous year's budget.
Ghana's economy grew at the fastest rate in 2 years in 2021, beating forecasts by the government and the International Monetary Fund after a better-than-expected fourth quarter. According to the government statistician, Professor Samuel Kobina-Enim, gross domestic product increased to 5.4% last year after expanding a revised 0.5% in 2020.
With a growth rate of 3.6 for the first quarter of 2021, the second quarter growth rate of 4.2, the third quarter growth rate of 6.5, and the last quarter growth rate of 7.0. The overall growth rate for 2021 stood at 5.4%, which corresponds to 459,130.9 million. With the just ended population and housing census, this translates to a per capita GDP of 2,565 Ghana cedis as per capita GDP for the year 2021. From a subsector perspective, again on an annual basis, we did record a contraction for the industry sector, specifically with the industry sector contracting by 0.8%, which was largely driven by what we saw in the mining and quarrying sector, subsector, and again, which was driven by the oil and gas contraction. We saw the services sector taking the lead of 9.4%, followed by the agriculture sector, 8.4%.
The data also show that Ghana's economy grew by 7% in the fourth quarter of 2021. The figure represents a higher growth rate than what was recorded in the same period in 2020, which saw a growth rate of 4.3%. The information and communication, manufacturing, and crop subsectors were the main drivers of GDP growth for the year under review.
In the industry sector, on an annual basis, in contrast to the 0.5 that we saw on quarterly basis growth rate, we are recording a contraction for the mining and quarrying sector for the whole period 2021, that is from January to December 2021. Indeed, the contraction was mainly driven by oil and gas, which also contracted by 12.5% for the entire period, January to December 2021, culminating in the contraction in the mining and quarrying sector, which year-on-year change contracted by 12.1%. The water and sewage subsector saw the highest growth rate expansion of 13.3%. Within the services sector, we saw information and communication contributing significantly to the 9.4 growth rate that we saw in the services sector, with a growth rate year-on-year of 33.1%. Education contracted by 3.7% for the entire period, January to December 2021.
Should we expect more of these positive prospects from the economy? Well, economist Dr. Patrick Esuming is optimistic that Ghana's economy will record a higher growth rate by the end of this year. He believes the current measures that are in place to ensure recovery from the pandemic will help improve the economy by the end of the year.
Ghana is seeking to return to a path of economic growth comparable to pre-pandemic levels, but a number of global and local factors are militating against projections. In 2020, GDP growth dropped to 0.4% compared to a projected growth rate of 6.8% before the pandemic. But the Ghana Statistical Service's recent data, which shows that Ghana's economy expanded by 5.4% in 2021, exceeds the projected GDP growth rate of 5.1%, which was captured in the 2021 mid-year budget review. Economist Dr. Patrick Esuming, in a reaction to the new figures, expressed delight at the bouncing back of the economy.
I think the release was very good news because it's not just that the growth rate is higher than what the government projected and what other international outlets also predicted, but also when you look at the quarter-by-quarter numbers, you see that throughout 2021, each quarter we grew faster than the preceding quarter. So it just tells you that the recovery from the problems we experienced under COVID-19 is well and truly underway. So the economy is recovering, the growth has been pretty good. You also see the sectors that suffered the most, some of the sectors that suffered the most during the COVID have also recovered. So I think it's all around good news. You see the real estate and the hotel sector that suffered a lot under the COVID. They've all seen substantial growth in the most recent release. So it just tells you that the recovery is really gathering momentum, and that's good for the economy.
In the 2022 budget, government projected an overall GDP growth of 5.8%, with a non-oil real GDP growth of 5.9%. The International Monetary Fund has also cut Ghana's growth rate forecast for 2022 to 5.2%, down from the 6.2% it earlier projected. These forecasts, in addition to the latest figures from the Ghana Statistical Service, demonstrate that there could be some hope on the horizon for Ghana, according to Dr. Esuming. He believes that the economy will experience further expansion this year.
We will expect that in 2022 we will do better than in 2021. You notice that earlier this year, some of the remaining restrictions on the economy that came from the COVID have been eased. The land borders have been opened. So we will expect that ordinarily we will do better in 2022 than 2021. I think the uncertainty in the global economy that has brought on by the Russian-Ukraine crisis may not help. So we could see a small dip in the GDP in the first quarter in particular. But depending on how long the crisis will continue for, that may drag into the second quarter. But overall, I think that I will expect, as of today, I will expect that 2022 we will do better than 2021. In other words, the recovery will continue to gather more pace.
London-based organization, the Economist intelligence unit, in its latest assessment of the Ghanaian economy, projected a further weakening of the cedi despite a sustained period of stability in the past few weeks. It noted that the local currency will end the year at around 7 cedis 87 pesos against the dollar, indicating a slowdown in the cedi's poor performance. But economists with Data Bank, Courage Boti believes the figure could be worse.
Ghana's economy has been going through turbulent times since the beginning of the year due to a number of challenges, including the rising inflation and the rising cost of fuel. The country's currency has also suffered some depreciation, especially against the US dollar. According to data from the Economist Intelligence Unit (EIU), the cedi weakened sharply in the first 2 months of 2022, reflecting an increased demand for the local currency due to a strengthening of the country's import-dependent economy. In a bid to stabilize the cedi, the Bank of Ghana announced foreign exchange interventions with $450 million to be released via foreign exchange forward auctions in the first quarter of 2022. However, $300 million had been released as at early March. Regardless, the EIU believes strengthening growth will continue to reinforce import dependency, causing the cedi to depreciate on average over the year 2022. With the dollar currently selling for about 7 cedis 90 pesos at some forex bureau in the country, the prediction by the EIU represents a further weakening of the cedi despite a sustained period of stability in the past few weeks. It further noted that the cedi is expected to depreciate sharply from 6 cedis to $1 at the end of 2021 to 7 cedis 87 pesos to $1 at the end of 2022. The EIU is of the view that there will be a gradual depreciation over the remainder of the forecast period to 10 cedis per dollar at the end of 2026 due to Ghana's sustained current account deficit. But speaking to City Business News, economist with Data Bank Courage Boti has described the projection made by the Economist Intelligence Unit on the local currency as somewhat overambitious given the current economic conditions and the instability of the cedi in recent times.
I think the Bank of Ghana, the exchange rate also, it's an area they have been very bullish because as it stands now, and I want to believe they are projecting for the retail market, as it stands now, exchange rate is around 7.5, 7.6 cedis to $1, depending on where you are buying from. I believe and I understand that there could be some corrections because the trend we saw from the start of the year till where we are now was an unusual one, triggered by a lot of factors. And I think that $2 billion we are expecting from syndication loan will help in that regard. The Bank of Ghana has introduced a forward auction also for the BDCs, which will help control the level of demand on the open market. But that notwithstanding, we know the pressure sources. In the second quarter, profit repatriations will be there. We will see seasonal demand pressures resurface again in the fourth quarter. And then even if the cocoa loan comes somewhere in the third quarter or towards the fourth quarter, the question is, will it be enough to sustain the outlook through the Yuletide season into the next year? And so I thought that the 7.35 currency projection or cedi dollar exchange rate projection for 2022 is again quite bullish.
Still on the economy, the World Bank Group says the government must prioritize policies that attract private investment. According to the Bretton Woods Institution, such an approach is critical, especially as countries like Ghana strive to return to a path of sustained economic growth.
Ghana, like many other developing countries, is dealing with the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, rising inflation, and the ongoing war in Ukraine, with the latter pushing up prices of food and fuel around the world. The World Bank's latest Africa Pulse report also highlights a tightening of global financial conditions and reduced foreign financing flows into the sub-Saharan African region. In addition to the above challenges, Ghana has seen a worsening of its debt situation, with the total public debt stock as of December 2021 hitting 351.8 billion Ghana cedis. The amount is equivalent to 80.1% of Ghana's gross domestic product, the highest level recorded in recent history. In its attempt to remedy the situation, government has introduced some expenditure rationalization measures as well as revenue mobilization strategies to improve upon its fiscal position. Commenting on Ghana's current economic situation, the World Bank Group President David Malpass stated that in addition to instituting growth-oriented policies, Ghana's government must ensure that once it gets back onto the Eurobond market, it uses the proceeds it gets effectively.
Should put in place policies that are strong and that attract investment by their own citizens and by foreigners. Some of those can be revenue mobilization policies, but very important, they should be growth policies and they should attract private sector investment. There's been a tendency to have too much emphasis on government-led investment, which doesn't end up adding to the competitiveness and the productivity as much as it should if it were less centralized. So I think those steps are important. As far as Eurobonds, the challenge is for governments to use the proceeds very effectively now if they borrow. A giant conflict of interest is that sitting governments are able to borrow and then future governments and the people of their countries have to pay back the borrowing. Remember, when you borrow principal, you only get to do it once. Even if you roll over at 0% interest rates into the future, which isn't actually available for developing countries, if you roll over at a low interest rate, you still are not able to borrow the principal again. It's only a one-time supply of money, and that has to be used very effectively. And my worry is that hasn't been the case in certain countries, and they're left with unsustainable debt.
On the troubling debt situation around the world, Mr. Malpass has called on countries with high debt levels, including Ghana, to commence debt resolution processes without delay.
The debt crisis itself is a topic of extensive conversation this week, both at the IMF, at the World Bank, and among the G20 and other shareholder groups that are forming this week. It's vital. We know what the data shows, a huge buildup of debt, especially including in the poorest countries. It's important that the resolution process start early. If it waits, the conditions or the resolutions are much more difficult to carry out. Sri Lanka is facing that problem now. It's important to form the creditor committees early. There was a call today for China to form the creditor committee for Zambia, which would help with the implementation of the common framework. And so I mentioned that in that as interest rates rise, the debt pressures are mounting on developing countries, and we need to move urgently towards solutions.
Beyond attracting more private investment to grow the economy, the Internal Audit Agency says the Public Procurement Act ought to be reviewed to deal with the challenges associated with the procurement process in the country. A recent report by education and policy think tank Imani, in collaboration with the Africa Center for Energy Policy ASEP, indicated that high non-compliance to procurement regulations among public institutions is costing the country a lot of money.
Imani Africa and the Africa Center for Energy Policy ASEP have asked government to take a second look at the current public procurement system, as it is a major revenue leakage point for government. This was captured in a research titled, "Is Ghana's Public Procurement System Hurting or Saving the Public Purse?" According to the research, the non-compliance to procurement regulations among public institutions is very high. In almost all the instances where the procurement law was breached, contracts tend to be overpriced and the nation lost huge sums of money. The research also noted that an electronic procurement platform to monitor the processes, which cost the state $10 million, has been ignored by majority of public institutions. The Ghana Electronic Procurement System, GANEPS, a platform designed to be used for procurement tenders, has been almost ignored, as only 24% of ministries, departments and agencies, public boards, statutory institutions, as well as metropolitan, municipal and district assemblies use the system. The report further highlighted highlighted the need to start sanctioning and punishing people as the weak oversight of the Public Procurement Authority and lack of political will to fully enforce the sanctions in the Procurement Act 2016 is the major driver of the increased procurement irregularities among public institutions. Director General of the Internal Audit Agency, Dr. Eric Odruasai, has called for a review of the Public Procurement Act in order to deal with the challenges associated with the procurement processes in the country. Addressing the media on the sidelines of a forum held by Imani Africa and the Africa Center for Energy Policy, Dr. Odruasai noted that this will help make the process of procurement less expensive in the public sector compared to the private sector.
Public Procurement Act has also made procurement very expensive. The reason is that the number of days, the period it takes to procure is too long. Time value for money. Apart from that, the various stages you go through, the committees, entity tender committee, the procurement entity will have to pay their certain allowance. They have to give them snack. Some will take lunch. Some even do procurement off-site. They go a high hotel, sleep in the hotel, high conference room in the name of evaluating procurement. When you do all of this, after that, in public sector procurement, when you finish doing the procurement, the assignment, they will have to investigate and then make sure that we have certified before payment is effected. So even when you have finished with everything, it will take about 3 to 6 months before you are paid. They factor this one in, and because of that, it has made public procurement more expensive than procurement undertaken by private entities. My call is that we should review the Public Procurement Act to make sure that it will reduce the unnecessary ancillary costs that we incur as far as public procurement is concerned and make it more value for money. As it is now, it is too expensive to do public procurement within the meaning of the Public Procurement Act.
City TV is live on DSTV. Go to channel 363. On GoTV, access City TV on channel 182. On a digital TV, please press the menu button on the remote control and run a new search on your TV. Take note that without an antenna, you cannot access City TV on your television. City TV can be accessed on a free-to-air digital box like the GoTV and Star Times box. City TV, it's your world.
It's been about 2 years since the COVID-19 pandemic struck in Ghana, and players in the hospitality space say business is almost back to normal for them. The sector was among the worst impacted by the outbreak as its associated restrictions deprived the industry of the needed environment to thrive. Unfortunately, things are beginning to turn for the better. When the pandemic first struck in Ghana in 2020, a lot of restrictions were introduced that were very inconducive for businesses in the tourism and hospitality sector. Lockdowns in parts of the country and restrictions on the number of persons who could attend events and go to eateries meant these businesses could not operate at full capacity. A lot of the players in the space were compelled to shut down, while others downsized to stay afloat. But with the gradual easing of restrictions, the government also, among other things, championed a domestic tourism drive to help the sector thrive. Hotels in Ghana say some of these moves by the government have partly contributed to the recovery process.
I think the industry is bouncing back, and we are almost close to the pre-COVID performance, at least from the middle of 2021 up to the beginning of the first quarter. I think performance has been quite good, and I'm patiently waiting for the government statistician to give his report that gives that clear indication that the industry is bouncing back.
According to them, they are almost fully recovered from the impact of the pandemic. President of the Ghana Hotels Association, Dr. Edward Akanyameke, further lauded the various government agencies in the sector for their efforts at improving the fortunes of the hospitality industry.
A number of factors. First of all, after the COVID hit us and we went through that period of distress, there has been a lot of effort to promote domestic tourism as much as possible. And then there's always been the easing of restrictions over the period. And then also some support from government as well. And the resilience of the industry players, especially with regards to pushing for marketing. There's been a lot of collaboration, there's been a lot of partnership. And the Ghana Tourism Authority and the Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture has also been an effective leader, a worthy leader. Tourism is public sector led and private sector driven, and they are really doing their bit in that direction. And all these factors have combined to result in that bouncing back that we're talking about.
As part of efforts towards improving the local capacity in the petroleum sector, about 140 Ghanaians have undergone 6 months of hands-on technical training to enable them work in the industry. This was made possible by the Petroleum Commission in partnership with the Takoradi Technical University under the Accelerated Oil and Gas Capacity Development Program.
The Accelerated Oil and Gas Capacity Development Program, being implemented by the Petroleum Commission, is a flagship government program to ensure Ghanaians build capacity to play lead roles in Ghana's petroleum sector. For this batch, 126 males and 23 females pursued a 6-month training program in mechanical, electrical, instrumentation and process engineering at the Jubilee Technical Training Center at the Takoradi Technical University. The Chief Executive of the Petroleum Commission, Egbert Fable, said the program is a game changer that will ensure Ghanaians play major roles in the industry.
Today we have a core of Ghanaians who are internationally certified and can work on offshore platforms and installations as well as in other industries where their competencies are in demand. Of the 149 persons who graduate today, 43 graduates City and Guilds International Vocational Qualification IVQ Level 3 Mechanical Technicians, 22 as IVQ Level 3 Electrical Technicians, 44 as IVQ Level 3 Process Technicians, and 41 as IVQ Level 3 Instrumentation Technicians. It cost the Petroleum Commission $7,500 United States dollars per each of the graduates by way of the direct cost of acquiring the certifications I've mentioned. In total, the Commission spent 5.1 million Ghana cedis for this training program. The best way to show appreciation to the government and people of Ghana for this investment in your respective futures is to commit to work in Ghana and help reduce the cost of oil and gas production so that the IOCs and the government of Ghana will spend less in exploration and production of our oil fields from the standpoint of job role localization.
The Vice Chancellor of Takoradi Technical University, Professor John Frankishen, said TTU's collaboration with the Petroleum Commission on training for the industry is critical for Ghana's local content targets, hence will continue to collaborate to train more.
Currently, there is an urgent need for technicians in the welding and pipe fitting for the oil and gas sector since the discovery of oil and gas in commercial quantities. It is in this vein that Takoradi Technical University has again entered into an MOU with Petroleum Commission Ghana to establish a world-class welding and pipe fitting center at TTU to train Ghanaian youth in this direction. We are extremely grateful to the Petroleum Commission for sponsoring some staff of the university currently undergoing training at North Alberta Institute of Technology, Canada.
Many of these trainees may be happy that today they've completed their program, but what they are not sure is their employability within the petroleum industry here in Ghana.
We are challenging the petroleum industry, those especially in the upstream sectors, that now we have the requisites to perform in the upstream, that they should come and employ us. Now we have the right certification, and as it will also increase the local content in our country.
It is my expectation that these companies are going to recruit us to fill in these positions because we've trained for these particular programs.
To address the fears of graduate unlikely difficulties,
on getting employment in the oil and gas industry, a Deputy Energy Minister, Andrew Ejapamesa, spoke to City Business News on plans to utilize their skills due to the high cost of engaging expatriates.
What it is that every operations offshore requires approval from the Petroleum Commission. And so as part of our localization, local content policy, staff localization is what it is that this one entails. And so the expectation is that when the requests come, Petroleum Commission, because they have the database of certified Ghanaians who can fill those roles, will then decline those requests and ask the IOCs to engage the Ghanaians who have due certification to participate in the space.
There might be dire consequences for the cocoa sector if the activities of illegal miners are not checked. Data from the Ghana Cocoa Board from Western, Ashanti and Eastern regions indicates that over 80% of selected cocoa farms in these areas have been devastated by illegal mining between 2019 and 2020. What then could be the way forward?
Out of the 22,984 total cocoa farm acres selected in these regions, 19,251 acres have been ravaged by the Galamsey menace. The head of public affairs of the Ghana Cocoa Board, Fifi Boafo, is worried about the impact of illegal mining on cocoa production, and he believes interventions must be immediately be put in place.
In terms of production, it has effects on production, and secondly, it also has issue with degradation and to the extent that Ghana will be seen as a country where its arable lands have been degraded. If we look at the current EU legislation being considered for passage, it talks about countries that have its forest or arable land that have been depleted. So this is also going to have an effect on the cocoa we'll be able to sell. But in terms of production, yes, it has a huge effect on production, and there's every need for us to stem this because it has continued over a period of time, and there's every reason for us to stop it because this is not sustainable. Apart from the fact that yes, one-off payment is given to these farmers, it affects what as a country we are able to generate from cocoa production, and then also it destroys the land which we have for the cultivation of cocoa.
After the deliberations, Board Chairman of Cocoa Board, Peter McMahon, shared some of the strategies to be adopted to increase cocoa production in spite of the menace.
We have told them that we are going vertical. When we say vertical, it means that each cocoa tree, which previously was producing maybe 100 pots, now we are able to nurture it through productivity enhancement programs to bring maybe 500 or 1,000 pots. That's vertical. Instead of going horizontal to breed more farms. So we are also asking Minerals Commission to go vertical. Instead of spreading out, they should go deep and save the land for other uses. And if a cocoa tree that was bearing 100 pots are now bearing 500, 1,000, it means more income is going to come to the farmer, certainly. So the farmers are getting richer. But we need to bring them to the new methods that the new Cocoa Board has brought and is going to bring in place, including what we call pollination, what we call pruning.
Now to power generation in the Volta region, and Chief Executive Officer of the Bui Power Authority, Mr. Samuel Kofi Jamesi, says the Chachadu generating station, which is under his authority, will add about 75 kilowatts of power to the grid from July this year. He was speaking during his tour of the Chachadu generating power in Alavanyo, and he is confident that power generated at the station is efficient and work will begin in the coming months.
Commissioned in November 2020 by His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, the Bui Power Authority's micro-hydro power plant, known as the Chachadu Generating Station, is Ghana's first micro-hydro power. The plant, situated on the Chachadu waterfalls in the Hohwe district of the Volta region, has a capacity of 45 kilowatts. The Chachadu generating station is a runoff river scheme and does not require the formation of a reservoir. It consists of a concrete diversion wire, an intake structure, diversion channel, a 4-bay, steel penstock, a powerhouse and a transmission line, and ties the electricity generated into the local distribution grid. In a talk to the generating station, the CEO of the Bui Power Authority, Mr. Kofi Jamesi, noted that the authority will increase the generating capacity of the Chachadu generating station at Alavanyo in the Volta region by 75 kilowatts from July and August this year. According to him, it will take up to 10 to 15 years to pay off the capital of the facility if the station was operated on 45 kilowatts, but could decrease to 7 to 8 years if increased to about 120 kilowatts. Mr. Jamesi also noted that the authority had put in a budget for generating the increase in capacity.
Now we run 45 kilowatts here, and the future plan is to increase it to around 120 kilowatts. So today we came here, first of all, to redeem a promise that we made to the people of Alavanyo Abenase to supply them with water. Initially it was supposed to be manual, but now we mechanized it for them, and it was given to them this morning in the presence of Tobi Kunde. Now our next visit is to come here to be able to see how best technically we can increase the power generation here.
He further noted that the Bui Power Authority will build a hall of excellence for the community, which will be used by tertiary institutions in their field of research.
We had a pledge with the people of Abenase to build a hall of excellence, whereby people from the universities, when they come here, they can gather, and have some lectures here and there to study the system.
Mr. Kofi Jamesi, during his tour, also commissioned and handed over a mechanized borehole to the people of Alavanyo Abenhinase in the Hohwe municipality. Speaking to City Business News, acting assembly member for the Alavanyo Abenhinase electoral area, David Ankubuatin, said the construction of the borehole will help in the provision of potable water to his electoral area, as they depended on water from the Chachadu waterfall.
Indeed, this project is, let me say, a good news to the whole community, simply because beforehand, about 10 years ago, our people used to fetch water from Chachadu waterfalls, the stream. After they have completed the Bui project, they've planned that as part of their social commitment to the community, they will get some water. We thought it was a joke. But then about 2 months ago, they came and actually started the project.
Well, this is all time will allow us for this week's edition of the Business Weekly Show on City TV, your most watched business show in the country. For more business news stories, check out our website, citybusinessnews.com, and don't miss out on the Business Dashboard, which airs on City TV at 10 p.m. sharp every weekday, with a repeat the following day at 7 and 10:30 a.m. My name is Michael Ogodu. Please follow me on Twitter at @mogodu. Catch you same time next week. Stay safe, stay informed. Bye-bye.